The following is a conversation with Ian Hurley, co-host of the popular Australian hunting podcast, The Hunter's Campfire, as well as someone who spent quite a lot of time in Australia around hunting clubs and especially the ADA branch in Queensland. Ian is an amazing guy and a personal friend of mine. And during this conversation, we have a great talk about the pros and cons of hunting clubs and what makes them tick, different forms of governance and financial business models, whether hunting clubs are worth joining, and the new wave of hunting clubs that's coming out in Australia that's giving more value to members. Now, we do get in the nitty gritty as well about some nasty stories of things that have happened in hunting clubs, but ultimately at the end of the day, we land on the point that hunting clubs are a positive thing and they're definitely something that you should be involved in. It's worth noting as well that we have different bias when it comes to this conversation. Ian's been involved in the ADA branch, which is a community-led organization for quite some time and is moving on to new things. I'm obviously president of the Australian Hunters Club, which is a very new, modern form of hunting club. We each have our biases, but what we try and do in this conversation is put our bias aside and mine the gold from each of these different positions and find where the value is. As always, I want to encourage you, if you want to support this podcast, support me and what I'm doing, and support yourself, I encourage you to check out the Australian Hunters Club, australianhunters.com.au. We do community events. We have a strong emphasis on giveaways and value to members. We have free member hosted hunts, a whole bunch of different things. You can check it out at australianhunters.com.au. But otherwise, without further ado, onto the conversation with Ian. So Ian, the American author and businessman Ryan Lilly said this. He said, "Be a pro at what you do. No one shows up to the meetings at the Unsuccessful Skydivers Club." My question to you, mate, the first one tonight is, what makes a successful hunting club? Or if you want to get really juicy, really quick, tell me what makes an unsuccessful one.
That's a tough question right up front. What makes a successful hunting club? Look,
or unsuccessful, if you want to get dark. I know you're a dark person in general.
We'll get into the weeds of it at some point, no doubt. Look, success for hunting clubs, I think, depends on the member, and each individual member wants something completely different. So as someone that organises a hunting club, it's very difficult to please everyone. And whilst one person will say, this club's amazing, over here on social media, they'll say, never join those bunch of numpties. They do nothing for the sport. So how do you define success, Chris? I'll throw it back at you.
That one, great. I mean, I'm running the podcast, but why not? This is the issue with podcasting podcasts. They just want to ask the questions back. I think you're right in that everyone, and this is one of the questions I had for later, but we can get into it now, is everyone wants something different from a hunting club. And that's what makes it so interesting and dynamic and fun, but also ultimately what can lead to their failures, or what can cause frustrations with members or disharmony and that kind of thing. But it's interesting that you mentioned that someone's objection potentially might be like that, the club does nothing for the sport. And like that is one of the metrics that people measure hunting clubs by. And it's an interesting one because not all clubs are really designed to be like political advocates for hunting in general. They might be advocates for hunting culture, wanting to improve hunting culture and improve it either just within their own club, or maybe they have a broader vision for the town or the state they live in or the country that they live in. But some clubs are just like, couldn't give a whit about what's happening in the broader scene and is just focused singly on like one thing. Like let me give you an example. We'll give a local example. A really interesting club, and some people wouldn't even call it a club, is I think it's called the Hunting Club, and it's based and I could be 100% wrong in this. So test listener or viewer, test this by Googling right now before I even have the opportunity to. But I believe that they are more so about just giving away guided hunts, and it's more like you become a member and you go into the draw each month to win a guided hunt. And I believe they offer things like Genuine Reason, I think in one specific state or maybe two, but it feels like the primary draw is not on getting together for meetings, not on events, not on community, but rather just on going into the draw to win a guided hunt. I mean, are you aware of that club?
Yeah, I know a good friend of mine, a member of my other club, someone that watches a lot of our social content, won one of those trips. He's just got back from a tar trip. Incredible. Had a great time.
Yeah.
Will advocate for that style of hunting club for his entire life. Excuse me. But again, that's why I say, how do you measure success? Because through different stages of my life, I have belonged to different clubs, and for different reasons. That type of club suits the type of person that may need a genuine reason, but wants a hell of an adventure or the chance to do it, but couldn't care less about club politics, doesn't want to mentor anybody, doesn't want to be part of anything else, but they want to put their card in the drawer, so to speak, to say, hey, I want to win that tar hunt. And like you see some of these trips that come up and you think, that's rubbish. Surely he's just giving it to his mates. I'm sure that's not. In fact, I know that's not the case with this guy because, Dave's a good bloke and he won it. And bloody hell, he got a 13-inch tar. So good on him. But yeah, so it really comes down to what you're looking for as an individual, what stage of your hunting world you're up to, and what you need to get out of a club, right? So for me, when I first joined a club, I was looking for experience. I was looking for someone to teach me how to hunt deer and show me where they were and what equipment I might need. And clubs are great for that.
Yeah.
But later on in life, I might want to be doing something where I can offer more mentorship because I'm more experienced now than I was before. And then later, I've had enough of that. I don't want to do that anymore. I just want my own time. Or you lot bugger off and I'll go and do something else.
Yeah.
So
You just want to go hunt tar or chamois and win a hunt.
yeah, I'm all peopled out. I've had enough. I've helped 100 people shoot a deer. Good on me. And now I want time for myself or my family or something like that. So I might wind out of one club and then ramp up in another one and things like that. So I think you got to look at it with that perspective.
Do you think it's fair or reasonable or even authentic to call, to use that word loosely? Like, I know I've seen online especially, and I know that online communities and online dialogue isn't necessarily reflective of truth and reality. I'm up to speed on that. But I've seen people criticize clubs that look very different, saying you're not a hunting club, that's not a hunting club. For instance, with the Hunter Hunting Club, I think it's called, you could potentially say that that's not a hunting club, it's just a giveaway, and you sign on to be a part of this giveaway. And I think that would be a fair and reasonable way to describe that business, I guess, is one way to look at it. But then, I mean, I'm also equally comfortable saying it's a hunting club. I'm happy with a loose definition, but some people aren't. I mean, what do you think that, I mean, is there limits to what a hunting club can be, or can you just smack that label on anything and say, hey, I'm a hunter and you're a hunter, this is a hunting club, here's a hunting fee?
Yeah, it's funny. I thought about this today, actually, completely out of this context. In a thing that I'm working on at the moment, where we're looking at bringing hunters together in a type of club, but it's more of a network, and we're probably going to use the term network for it because it's people that can bring their experiences and share their experiences with others. A club, I find, it's a community of people that work towards whatever the club put together as its mission statement. And if that club, and one of the clubs that I belong to is the Australian Deer Association, it is all about the advocacy of deer as a game species. That is its purpose in life. And that's where its funds get driven, and that's where everything goes into that mission, above everything. And that's good because that's what they say they're going to do. Other clubs will put themselves together and say, all the money that we create and we raise, we're going to use for the benefit of members and activity. So that's a club because it's got its little statement and that's what it does. If it's an organization that's taking membership money and then funding a hunt for a prize, I agree, it's not really a club. But these days, clubs, don't they have a community around social media, and they become part of that, and the banter starts and they get to know people and they have meetups, and all of a sudden, maybe it is, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Maybe it becomes a club. Yeah.
Just by that nature of social media.
I think you're right in that there's some truth about the unique, like a kernel of truth about a community being a core part of what a club is. But at the same time, like we've already insinuated, when you use the word club, that's like a loaded term historically, and it's a loaded term in terms of the kind of cultural zeitgeist and what people think. And so you can very quickly and easily communicate what a product is that's behind the club by saying we're a club and this is our product. As it's a membership. And people go, oh, okay, I get it. There's some sort of like reoccurring fee. There's some sort of benefit behind it. There might be some community. Like they kind of get a picture of what it is. But if you were to say, like if you were doing your advertising or marketing campaign for the hunting club, I don't want to spook them too much, but if you were doing that and you said, hey, we're a privately funded corporation that every month you go in the draw to win a professionally guided hunt, and we have genuine reason. Like you're getting so wordy, whereas you can say, hey, we're a hunting club, and then that's kind of a sexy name behind it, and then they can Google it and go, oh, they give away stuff, and like you can kind of use that term just to purely as a communication tool to kind of get across a measure of what you're doing. I mean, what was the first club that you joined?
Sorry, just back on that one. It's a hunter's lottery. Essentially, isn't it? Yeah. You put your ticket in each week, might win a hunt. It's good. Not to disparage what they do. Their members love it, and I'm sure they do a fantastic job. I don't know what else they offer, so it's hard for me to comment. But it's more of a lottery than a club.
That's a sexy name, like the Hunter's Lottery. Like if you run this club and you're listening, change your name to the Hunter's Lottery, because there's like risk and reward, and there's like it's enticing, and there's
Hunter's Lottery.
Yeah, TM. We trademark it. We'll say the name. Like for full context, the club that I run, the Australian Hunters Club, that is a portion of our value offering. Like, is that we give away a guided hunt every month. In fact, next year in 2023, we are giving away nearly 2 guided hunts a month, and that's not our main. That's not. It's unreal. It's awesome. Like you said, your mate Daniel, who won that tar hunt. Dave, sorry. Like that's amazing, and the experience that he had would be incredible. And to offer that is no easy thing for a club to do.
He had to pay to get there, but after that, he was on helicopters. He was in the top of the Alps. He was like incredible experience. The smile on his face was just unbelievable.
But my concern, I guess, is if that's all you offer, then you're missing out on so much of what makes clubs wholesome and good. And like you said, everyone is interested in a different thing. Everyone is at a different stage and contribute a different thing at any given time. And so if it's just a lottery, I think there's something that you're missing out on. But going back to my question before, what was the first club that you joined and how old were you?
So I joined my first club when I moved to Queensland, and I was looking at getting back into hunting. So I moved over from New Zealand when I was late teens. Spent my
You from New Zealand?
Oh, am I from New Zealand? Yes, I am. Hang on one sec. Still recording. Flew to Sydney chasing skirts, and I spent the good 4 or 5 years chasing skirts around the pub scene in Sydney, and then eventually I met my now wife and settled down a little bit, and eventually moved to Queensland.
She had the best skirt of them all.
Best skirt, shortest skirt. She's not listening. It's great. So moved to Queensland and done a little bit of hunting Aussie style, right? Not New Zealand style, I call it Aussie style hunting. A group of mates.
What is with you guys? That you New Zealand guys use that word Aussie style. I was talking to a guy from New Zealand the other day, and he kept saying the word Aussie style or like Aussie this and Aussie that. I'm like, what?
It's the Aussie way.
A word
that it's fair income, mate.
All right. Yeah, so Aussie style.
It's a different style, right? I joined a group of, this is not something we can do in New Zealand. That's why I call it Aussie style. A group of mates went out to Burke and did feral control on a property out there. And it was carnage, just carnage. Lots of fairly wealthy people showed up on that trip. And there were 2 ultralight planes that raced each other out from Sydney, a couple of pilots from some airlines that I won't mention. There were quad bikes, there were 2 motorbikes, there were ATVs, there was all sorts of stuff. Can you mention
the airlines? I feel like this. I want to hear the airlines.
No.
That's what we do in this podcast. We go deep, Ian.
I don't
mention the airlines.
I won't tell you their names. One was a Virgin pilot, one was a Qantas pilot, and they were buddies, and they raced each other. Anyway, that's part of the story. When we were out there, like they do mustering with aircraft. They basically mustered this thing called the Mallee paddock, and they pushed all of the ferals out of this paddock and onto a fence line where everyone was waiting with rifles and tags. It was all legally and above board, but it was a very well coordinated drive to get game off this massive property. And a lot of it got broken up for dog food and put into freezers and chillers and all that sort of stuff. It was well coordinated, but it's not something I'd ever seen before. Anyway, I had my license. I borrowed a rifle, and it was a great week out there with all of the boys' toys and a bit of shooting to go with it. So I sort of rekindled myself in for my love of hunting. Not that that was really hunting. And when we moved up to Sydney, I went to the local gun shop, which is what so many people do, and just said, look, I want to learn to hunt. I want to get back into hunting, and I'd like to hunt deer. And it just turned out that the owner of the shop was the state president of the Australian Deer Association. So he had lots of good things to say about the ADA at the time.
I've got a club
for you. And here's the Remington 700 you should buy for the job. And I bought it, and I signed up, and I've been hunting ever since.
So just to kind of give some historical context, but also context for people who are potentially looking to get into clubs, how did that first opportunity come out? So how did you hear about that opportunity? How did you know that opportunity existed? How did you get invited onto that opportunity?
The Aussie one.
Yeah, the Aussie style. Yeah.
He was a mate. I used to be in the Rural Fireys down in Sydney, down in the northern suburbs of Sydney. And one of the guys that was basically on the truck with me when we got call outs was organising a fundraiser for a community out there called Hermidale. And he organised this huge big beach volleyball competition in the middle of the desert. People came from all over the country, entered their teams, drunk too much rum, slept in swags in the pub out on the main road, and played volleyball. And it was just this crazy event. But we stayed on a station, and the station needed this help, and we had sparkies and plumbers and all those sorts of people with us. They'd go around and help out the community while we were there. It was just a really wholesome experience out there, helping community, doing fundraising, doing some feral management for fun. It was just pure luck.
And so you start in the ADA, and you just so happen to meet the state president, and it's a growing club, obviously in Queensland, because for those of you who don't know, the ADA originated in Victoria, I believe. And then I think it moved into South Australia initially, and then it kind of bumped up. I could be 100% wrong about that, but just because I know some people in South Australia who were involved in the early days. But so you're new to this club, at least, that's focusing on deer. You want to get into hunting with deer. What happens then? Do you just you sign up? You pay your membership? Is there a clubhouse? Do you have regular meetings? Do you have to go through some initiation with a paddle? Like what's
hazing ceremony?
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, at the time, once you signed up with the ADA, or if you're interested in the ADA, you could go along to their next club meeting, and they were holding monthly meetings at the local SSAA range in Toowoomba, and we'd go down there in the cold and sit there and listen to people talking about the deer that they'd shot and the massive trophies they had and the experiences that they had, and then all of the politics that was going on with the branch and the broader club. So you'd hear the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that in one meeting. And then my experience at the time, funnily enough, was no one talked to me. I was just the new guy down the back. So once it was finished, I got in my car and I went away, and I thought about all those stories, and yep, deer hunting's for me. They're all a bunch of cagey people that don't want to tell any secrets. It's deer hunters, right?
Well, especially in Queensland, it is.
Oh, terrible, yeah. So I was reading more magazines, and then I read an article, and it was one of the guys that was at the meeting. It was an article in a magazine. I thought, this guy knows his stuff. So went back to the next meeting. Same deal. Listened to more stuff, more stories, more politics. Left without a friend. And eventually, on my third visit, I put my hand up down the back and said, "Don't you guys talk to new people?"
I know exactly how you would have said that too. I can picture you.
Straight up. And anyway, someone came and spoke to me at the end of the meeting and said, "It's funny you say that. We've thought we've had a problem with our new members because people come and go pretty quickly. Would you like to help us sort that out?" And all of a sudden I was on the committee as a new member advocacy person that would latch onto them when they walked in the door, shake their hands, introduce them to a president, and give them a bit of a feel-good fuzzy feeling.
You were the Jehovah's Witness of the ADA.
Hey, maybe. It was honest feedback. This was a club of old hunters. They've been around a long time. Their spots were secret. They weren't going to tell you anything. Who's this young punk that's going to come, and potentially shoot that stag that I've been looking at for 3 or 4 years? No way, no how was I going to get an inkling. But the club, once you earned your stripes, had a couple of blocks. You could do inductions. You were able to go up there with an experienced person. And eventually I became one of those bit more well-known people because I took on a secretary job. And, I have to say that if you're part of a club and you don't put your hand up to do anything, you're unlikely to get much reward. Those that give tend to get. And I was pretty quick to put my hand up to help out. So all of a sudden I was in the inner sanctum and, helping people that were joining the club get access to places that, that they'd never seen before. So just the way it went.
Yeah. So you've said some really interesting things that I think are conducive of how clubs have historically been run. And I'm starting to see a change in some new and modern clubs that's kind of breaking this mold somewhat. But it's definitely like something historically that has happened and we need to be conscious of. And that is, if you want to get anything out of the club, you really have to be heavily involved, and not just heavily involved, but you need to be involved in like a committee or involved in like the board or a treasurer or a secretary or something. And for me personally, this is a tension that I struggle with because I think people should be able to get something out of, if you're a member and you're paying, you should be able to get something out of it. There should be like some sort of value that you can immediately get out of it. Now, I'm 100% with you in that I think the people who get the most out of clubs are the people who get the most involved. And it's kind of, you get what you get out what you put in. That is 100% the case with hunting clubs in general, or clubs in general. But I do think that there's this unhealthy kind of culture in a lot of clubs that, unless you're in the upper echelon, unless you're in the top tier kind of clique, then you don't get access. Then you don't get invited out on the trips, that you don't get the hidden knowledge. And it's kind of like a club within a club sometimes. I mean, is that a fair...
Oh, and look, in my club, this is still with the ADA. Once you joined the club, if you didn't pay another fee, you weren't part of the Darling Downs hunting group. So you could be a member, receive your weapons license, get a magazine, come to the socials, participate like that. But if you wanted to go on club hunts, you paid another fee, and that got you into the group of people that hunted the club block. So yeah, but it wasn't a secret society. It was well known. If you wanted to get access, you pay your fee, you go through the process. Yeah. You have to do a working bee. We forced people to go through the process of participation if they wanted to hunt. Yeah. And that was a good process, I have to say, at the time. There was nothing wrong with that. But we still got our fair share of people that came and mucked around on a working bee and expected to be able to get for free road access to a block, right? It's a problem.
I think you're spot on in that anyone who comes into a club and expects to get everything for nothing is going to have a rude awakening. But at the same token, if you come into a club and you pay your money and you don't get any value, and it's almost like you've paid for the opportunity to pay again, that almost seems criminal. And so it's this weird tension between it not being this isolated, restrictive experience, but not being at the same time like you just give everything away. People need to kind of not earn it, but at least be involved, at least contribute.
There need to be levels.
Yeah.
There need to be levels, I think, in all of these clubs. But who decides those levels? That becomes interesting in clubs where ownership is not a thing. You voted in, you voted out. You rally the troops, you vote them out so that you can get in. Clubs are notorious for all of this sort of work, right, that goes on in the background. Oh, it's coming up to AGM time. Surely we can muscle our way in this time. And, there's a purse there that we can spend on a hut or something. Whatever, this is the way clubs function a lot of the time. But
But do they have to? That's the question. Because you're talking about clubs that are run by communities, community-driven clubs. But there's a growing trend, and some people again argue that this is not actually a club, but is that a club or a community that is actually founded on a company or a business where there is an owner of that business and everyone else pays to be involved in the activities of that business, but there is no committee unless the company forms one, and then the only power they have is the power that's essentially relegated or given to them. And so there is no hierarchy, there is no ladder to climb, there is no AGM. There's all of that politicizing can potentially, and I'm not saying this is even a good thing, but it can be removed. So only the benefits remain. Do you think that's a good thing or bad thing or dangerous or?
It's a good thing. I think the club of the future will operate that way. There are new clubs standing up fairly often at the moment. Yours is fairly fresh, fairly new. There's some others that have come up and popped up around. I'm a big advocate for, I say this and then I'll contradict myself, lots of small local clubs. But I love the social club, the social media club. Join the community, participate every way you can be national, can be quite easy to get together and talk and do things, but it still doesn't need that big hierarchy. Until you start doing things like organizing activity. Because if you organize a club-based activity, you now have risk, work instructions, insurances, all of those things that are super important to make sure that you don't get in trouble. We've got volunteers here. Volunteers can get sued into the ground if they do something wrong and they're not covered by the appropriate insurances. You need to know this stuff when you start a club. And some of the big clubs have got that stuff down pat. Now, do they do it with their own self-interest? Maybe, sometimes. Are they insuring themselves but pushing the workload onto others? Not sure. Haven't dug that deep into it. But sometimes I see other organizations that it seems that that's the way. And I think that's a bit tough. But that's one of the reasons you look into a club and decide whether it's you fit for your purpose or not.
Well, let's kind of linger on this topic, because I think there's something that we can mine out of this. I think there's still some more stuff that we can go even deeper, because really what we're talking about is these two different clubs. One that is a private company and one that is a community-driven company. And the way that they operate is very, very different. And I think one of the things that you've mentioned is kind of strongly highlighted in both of those, and that is self-interest. Because in a company, in a business, and this is like the Australian Hunters Club falls into this category. Someone is one person, or if there's employees, are benefiting financially from this membership. So when you pay your membership, it goes and it lands in that bank account, and you as a member can't expect to have any share of that. It's not a kitty; it's that person's bank account, and whatever benefits you get are the benefits that have been promised to you, and you'd understand, or you'd assume that they're getting paid for out of that kitty, but you don't have any control. The other one is the community-driven one, where your membership goes into like a fund, or that is basically how that money is spent is dictated by the community, by the president, by the treasurer, by the secretary, by that board,
or by its hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can get into the complexities of branches.
I'll pay my membership. It goes into the kitty. It doesn't get decided how it's used locally. It goes into the broader organisation to fulfil its obligations.
So this is a unique thing that's interesting about, and I'll come back to interest in a second, but let's go with this now because you've mentioned it, is that large clubs like the ADA or the SSAA have a national presence and a national brand and statewide or sometimes region-wide expressions, or kind of mini clubs that are still the SSAA or still the ADA, but it's the ADA Toowoomba or the ADA Southeast or whatever it is for you guys. And what you're saying is basically that you can pay a membership fee and it goes into your local branch, and then your local branch just chucks it up and it goes into the national fund, and the national fund uses that money to meet its obligations based on its, what's the word? its values and what it's committed to, its constitution. But that might not be in your state's best interest. So all the ADA money that you might be giving in Queensland might be paying for deer conservation in Victoria, which is a bit rough if that's what's happening.
It's a tough one
in some regards.
Yeah, in some regards. If I was a member that was joining, expecting that membership money was going to be spent on me for a portion of it to support me in what I want to do as a hunter locally, then I'd suggest that when you join a club, you dig deep enough to understand where your money's going to go. Now, the case and scenario that you've spoken about, I don't know the exact details of all of the finances because I'm not on that part of the world. But what I can say is the funds do go where they go, and they go exactly where the ADA said they were going to go.
100%.
And there are times when organisations need to change the way they spend. So when they might spend on with a national program to promote deer advocacy, things like that, the status of deer as game rather than pests and ferals, those sorts of things, they may have a national campaign to do that. But at some point in time in its life, it can retract back into the heartland of where it's from and spend more money in that location. And me in Queensland, I might say, oh, that's not fair. But if you look at it deep enough, they are doing what they said they were going to do. They're not doing anything wrong by anybody. It's just that it doesn't suit my purpose right now. And that's sort of where I led and I started with this. You choose your club based on what it can do for you and whether it meets the purpose and the goals that you have as an individual. And if it doesn't, move on. This whole life membership concept, that's a thing of the past. We used to be, I'm Liberal or Labor, I'm a Holden, I'm a Ford, I'm a whatever for life. Not anymore. Like, we've got life members of the ADA. Good on them. Absolutely amazing. They don't hunt anymore. They've been around a long time. They formed 40 years old, our branches this year. Right? It's been going a long time. And a lot of those foundation members, they pay their membership every year and they're happy to support the advocacy of deer, and that's what they do, and that's what they expect. And they get a magazine, some other little benefits, and that's fine. For me, that's not what I want anymore. It was exactly what I wanted at the time, but now I've progressed through my career and my hunting career, and I've given back to the club through mentorship. I've been the president of it for a number of years. I've been on the committees for a long time. I feel like they gave me a lot early. I've given as much back, if not more, to make it a good branch, a good club, and it's time for me to go and pursue what my real ideals are. So I will find something different.
Do you think your position is not only a reflection of where you're at in your hunting journey, but a reflection of what's happening in society in general, in that, gone are the days where you did an apprenticeship as a mechanic, and then you're like my dad, you're a mechanic for like 40 years, and and you do not leave. Like, you're with the same job and you stay with the same job, and there's like loyalty and we change our phone providers, we change our internet providers, we change our mortgage providers. Like, we are constantly changing, and we have. The reason why we do it is because we're incentivized to do it, because we can get things. There's more value for us if we move around. But I just wonder if something is lost in that kind of transactional approach to life, whether it's a hunting club or maybe not to a mortgage, because screw the banks, but like that there's this kind of resilience that you can build up, or when you stay in the same space for a long time, you can see the growth in that space, or you can contribute to the growth in that space. If you jump in and jump out, I'm not suggesting that you've done this at all, mind you. I think you've done an admirable job building the club that you've been in, and you should be released to go do whatever you want. But I just wonder for some people whether they need to be careful of how flippant they can be about these kind of commitments. And I mean, when you join a hunting club, is it are you making a commitment to that club, or are you just trying to get benefits out of it?
Well, that depends on whether you're joining a club or a network or a social group. Let's go back to the definitions. It's a difficult one. If I join a club, I'm paying a fee to get some benefits. Those benefits, they're listed on a membership form. You will get, all right? And if you don't get those, feel aggrieved. that's okay. If you join a social group online, and I'm part of a couple of different hunting social groups, I don't pay a fee for that. And I'm on there to support those that are doing like-minded things. If I join one of a more modern club that's been built up, similar to what you're doing, you're providing different styles of benefits and a completely different framework and structure, that may well suit me right now because I'm looking for opportunity. I'm looking for somebody else to provide that opportunity, but I'm willing to participate to get it. Right? But that's different to me paying money to support deer advocacy, because in your world, I pay money, goes into your bank account, and you'll provide me benefits. And that's great.
Yeah.
Right. That's similar, but the funds are distributed for the members, or they're used to encourage more members to come along and spend some more money. But ultimately, you're giving us opportunity. The money that comes into membership from an ADA or a ABA or various different other organizations, if you want money to create opportunity, we go and fundraise for that. That's different. It doesn't come out of membership. Yeah.
Well, see, that's what's maybe that we can lean into that and go back to what I was talking about before and cover this, because I think this is really interesting with those two different styles, community driven versus a business driven. Is like you said, there's incentive, there's financial incentive with both. And for instance, with the Australian Hunters Club, the money comes into my bank account. I have flesh in the game, and I am incentivized to work my butt off to give as much value as I can to members, to give away as many professionally guided hunts, to give away as like I think for next year, and I don't want this to be a plug for the Australian Hunters Club, I just want to kind of give idea of values. Like we're going to give away, I think it's like $300 to $500 worth of hunting gear every month to one person. And so like, it's like building, it's like I'm incentivized to do it because I benefit from it. And when I benefit from it, there's more club members and the club grows and we can get more benefits. And so it kind of naturally increases, but it all falls on my shoulders. Whereas with a hunting club that's driven by a community, there's so many more cogs. There's so much more complex. There's so many more people that are invested, either not so much financially, although from what I can tell, the people in the upper echelon do get a little bit of a kickback from the roles that they play in those businesses. But it's not much. It's not career money. It's just like a bit of play money to kind of support their activities, basically.
It's access to more opportunity than the other guy.
Yeah.
If you're on the committee, you're getting contacted by people. People contact me and say, hey, I've got a deer problem, because I'm the contact point for the ADA. So I get first shot at the access. It's up to me then, if I'm honest about that, and hand that over to the club and try and talk about how the club can work with that access. I had a call from state government one day saying, hey, we've got some businessmen from overseas that would love to go hunting on the Darling Downs while they're here. They'll pay for it. And I'm talking lots of money.
Big money.
Right. So as a club, if we were positioned to be able to take them on, we probably could. Turns out we weren't insured for it. We're not guides. We couldn't do it. We had to hand them off to somebody else. But those opportunities come around because you are putting yourself out there as a leader of your group. Things come to you. And you'll see the same in what you're doing. You do a lot of work in and around, hunters and outfitters, people like that. So, excuse me, just trying to get rid of this cold. On point. You're getting, to talk to people that can provide opportunity, on a grand scale compared to anybody else. But you work for that. That's good.
Yeah, I guess my concern just though is with the community model is like you said, it relies on a level of trust and authenticity and accountability that may not be there. So like if money comes in, like $100 comes in to both businesses with a membership fee, and one will go into a bank of someone who then works hard for that $100, and you hopefully get $100 of value out of it. And if you don't, you can leave and whatever. You'd be like, oh, frustrated and jaded or whatever. $100 goes into the community-driven club, and like, what happens to that $100? There's turning of cogs, there's meetings, there's time wasted, there's disagreements, there's contention, there's politicizing, there's ladder climbing. And then does anything get, like, there's rent to pay, there's insurances to pay. And at the end of the day, you got to wonder whether that $100 actually did anything at all, or whether it just kind of evaporated into the cogs and machinery of that club. And I don't want to be overly critical, because I think that there's a lot of magic and gold and good things in community-driven clubs, and they can do things that a private business just can't and won't ever be able to do. But I do have this fear, especially from the financial position, that money that you put into a community-driven club doesn't necessarily... It gets spent as well. It's not as optimized. It's not structured as well to make the best use of that money.
100% depends on the viewpoint. Large organization, again, I'm using the ADA as a concept. There's other clubs that I've been along with that have been very similar. There's two levels of funding almost, right? So we've got a local level of funds that we build up ourselves through various different things. It might be from doing a Bunnings sausage sizzle, if they'll allow you to do it as a hunting club, which they don't, so don't bother trying. I've tried, they don't let you. You have to disguise
They're
yourself
gold
as
mines too.
Animal welfare company or something. So we fundraise in various other ways. You run raffles, you do those sorts of things. That becomes branch money, and that's the money that you got to wonder where it's going sometimes. Like in my club and in my experience, when I took on the secretary and the president role where I am, I inherited a reasonable sum of money. Not I, but the club was well balanced. Over the 6 or 7 years that I've been a part of it, we haven't touched it. Right?
Why?
Because you need a purpose for it. What do I need it for?
So you're telling me, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, Ian, and you can try and rip me. You're telling me for 7 years the cogs in your club have worked so slowly that you have not been able to spend. You haven't found a good reason to spend all that money.
Tell me what I'd spend
on your members.
Tell me what I'd spend it on. Help me.
Give $100 to every one of your members.
Why?
For kicks.
Because
reduce it.
But they didn't.
Not?
But they didn't.
Because they're members.
Yeah, they're members, sure. But what if there comes a time when there's a good reason to use that money?
What if it's been 7 years? What if?
So I'll donate it.
What if?
I'll leave it there for the next president, and then they'll come up with a better plan. I didn't want to touch.
Will they?
I'm happy to use it if members of the club come up with a good idea to use it. It's there. We've also got the ability to lean on state for some funds, and ask national for money if that's what we want to do. If we have an initiative, we get a block, we want to build a hut on it, those sorts of things. We need some funds. Yeah. That's what it's there for. It's there for club benefit purpose. The money that was fundraised there, just coincidentally, majority of that was fundraised by members that don't exist anymore. So it's not as if the people that earned the money or raised the money and not benefiting from it. Right? The people that are in the club now didn't earn it. They don't know about it. Well, they know about it because it's there in the minutes. But there's no real reason. It should be left there, in my opinion, for someone to come up with a good reason to use it, and then they can.
If it's in the minutes, I'm not a member of your club. I'm not sure whether you can publicly disclose this. Can we be real talk about the size of the money? Like how much money was it? Just so we can get some context. Are we talking 15 grand? Okay. So what can we do with 15 grand over 7 years? That's the question. Or was there anything that we could? I mean, because that's a good amount of money, but it's not a huge amount of money. I mean, but it's not a huge branch, right? It's not like, we're not saying you had a membership of like 10,000 people. Like it's, much smaller than that. I mean, can you share the size of the branch, the context for that, or is that?
We have roughly 150 members.
Okay, 150 members. Okay.
In my branch on the Darling Downs. Yeah.
So, I mean, over that 7 years, could you have spent like, I don't know, could you pay a farmer like $1,000 a year and have like a ripping hunt and invite, and I mean, give like new hunters like you had the benefit of that hunt when you moved to Sydney, where you had that crazy awesome experience that set the fire in you and got you passionate. Like, surely that's a good reason to spend $1,000 a year and then have, or $2,000 a year and have cash just,
You're assuming that I don't provide those benefits without the need for the money.
Okay.
My club right now enjoys the benefit of 10 to 15 organised hunts a year, and we don't need to touch that money. They'll go Victoria. They'll go to New South Wales on our licence hunts. We have other hunts that people can come onto. We don't need to use that to create this. If you go spending it on, a one-time access for 5 or 10 people, what about the other 140? Where do they get benefit?
Could buy some really cool key rings.
It'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Yeah. That's not to say that we haven't made a bit of money and it's gone in and gone out and gone in and gone out. I'm just saying that the funds that we inherited were stable and they've stayed that way. And that's really good because one day we used to have a block that we put in quite a bit of money to put a hut on. We were able to plumb it, put a kitchen in, do lots of things, and it used branch money to do it. The day will come where that is needed again, and I'd rather leave it in the bank for that day than frit it on something that we're already providing our members a good service without the use of it. So
I want to linger on this a little bit longer.
Chris wants the money. Chris wants the money.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good reason. Give it to me. No. So if we think right now, can we think? Here's a challenge for you while we're recording this podcast. Can you think of a good reason to spend that $15,000 now?
No.
Outside of the machinery of the club, outside of the politicizing, outside of the meetings, if you didn't have to get approval, if you could just go, you have full access to that money and you can make a decision based on what you think would be helpful and useful for that club, could you, in all your good conscience, spend that money or part of that money?
No. It's open. The club is allowed to use it. If somebody has a great idea, they'd like to use it, that benefits the club, they put a request forward and we'll use it. No problem. But the members join our club specifically because they want to hunt. So we go hunting.
Yeah.
I can't, in good conscience, say, hey, boys, let's go to New Zealand, 6 of us. Let's pull some cash out of the bank. And the rest of the members don't use it. That's not fair. I can't do that.
I get that. I'm not suggesting that.
It's not easy to spend other people's money. It's not.
Yes.
That's
a really good point.
Conscience.
Whereas a business doesn't have that issue because there is no one else's money.
Right. So I could spend it on a raffle. I could say, here's some money. I'm buying a hunt off Chris Waters. It's going to be great. Everyone tips in some money. I'm going to give you 1,000 and I'm going to earn 1,000 back. I'm still going to be back where I started.
Yeah.
So you can use it to do stuff. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Right.
But
And so here's the other problem with clubs. 1 or 2 people do all the work.
Yes.
So if I decided that I was going to use this money, I was going to give it to Chris, he's going to organise me a hunt, we're going to run a raffle.
Stop telling you're going to give me the money. I don't want them.
Chris wants the money. No, he doesn't. But anyway, it's an example. If that's what I decide I want to do, who's going to organise it?
Yeah.
So I'll throw it at one of the guys that are already doing a lot of work, or I'll do it myself because I'm doing a lot of work. Back to the club scenario where I pay a fee and I demand a service. That's the type of club we're talking about. People join. People join. Ian, we've seen your videos of what you do with the club. It's great. I want to do that. I've joined. When's the next New Zealand trip? Well, buddy, 6 of us go a year, right? We've known each other for a long time. We organise it as part of the club, right? And we usually invite a new person or 2 along, but it's usually someone gets an invite to that trip because they do a lot of work for the club. It's a reward.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you said before that a few people do a lot of the work, and again, that's very common in community-driven clubs. And the question becomes, how do you incentivize people to do work? And part of what you're saying is you incentivize people to do work by giving them extra benefits. Couldn't you just pay them?
Yeah.
Not
in this club. Not in this club. I can't because I'm paying them. They're an employee or a contractor.
Where in a business you can.
Right.
I could say, for instance, you've showed you've showed some loyalty. You're chipping in, and maybe I'm not even trying to motivate people. Maybe it's just like, hey, I'm seeing you're doing an awesome job. How can I empower you to do more? Maybe they become like a state coordinator or something, and you pay them a casual salary to keep doing what they're doing and kind of championing. They're things that a business can do. And again, please, if you're listening, don't hear me saying that I think the business model is better than the community model. These are just ideas. But there's some freedoms and flexibility. Now, obviously, that comes with a whole bunch of legal caveats and concerns, and there's risks and all that kind of thing. But there's some of the flexibility. Something that you mentioned before as well.
What if you don't pay them, but they get reduced cost membership?
Yeah.
They get a benefit. So, you're on a committee. When you're on a committee, you don't have to pay X portion of the fee.
Yeah.
There's ways.
Yeah, I definitely think there's ways. I mean, one thing that you said that was interesting about how it's hard to spend money in clubs, which is just a fascinating statement to make. And then you also couple that with the fact that it's hard to motivate people because only a few people do most of the work. When it comes to submitting ideas, let's say you're having a club meeting and the chairman says, all right, the speaker says, does anyone have any ideas for club activities or projects or programs or whatever? Do you find that the best ideas don't rise to the top? It's just the ideas from the people with the loudest voices. And we all know the people who have the loudest voices, like every community has those people who just like the sound of their own voice. Is that a common trope in clubs?
Or it's I've got a good idea. It's good, isn't it, Chris? Sorry. Yeah. It's good, isn't it, Chris? Don't disagree with me is another version of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that ours is fairly well balanced. We don't get a lot of people disrupting the status quo. If we go through an AGM process, normally it's thanks very much, guys, for another year of service. Hopefully you'll hang around for another one.
Yeah, please don't leave.
Which is really interesting. But clubs need to turn over their committees and executives. It has to happen. New blood needs to come in. And people are always scared that when they do that, they'll leave it in a hole. You got to put that out of your head, I think, and do what's right for the club or yourself. But no, I've certainly been in clubs where there's been groups of vocal people that will get together, on the fringes and come up with grand plans, and then vote those grand plans in as a group. So it's well orchestrated. I've been in a few different organisations that I've seen that behaviour. You were talking about the hierarchical stuff before. It's you in a club you can get you and 20 of your mates to join an organisation, rock on in, sign your wives up and your kids, and all of a sudden you've got voting right. Like I was at a club. It was a different club. I was at a club, and the guy that wanted to be the president signed his family up 3 days before the AGM and brought them along to vote, as if it was a prize to win. Wow, unbelievable what some will go to. Right? Wow. Yeah, it's just nuts. Wow. But
here's where I can play devil's advocate against the private business model of a club. This is where it can get really dangerous, is that you mentioned that it's good and it's common practice in community-driven clubs to refresh their leadership structure regularly through voting in it. Again, it's a democratic process. Everyone has a vote. All votes are equal. You get a new president, you get a new treasurer, you get a new secretary, you get a new committee, or whatever, board. Whereas in a business model, the person who owns the business, unless they sell it, they own the business. They're in charge. They're not going anywhere. And so if they're a bad seed, if they don't have your best interests at heart, if they go through a dark time in life and their judgment starts to become questionable, that's who's leading your organization. You can't vote them out. There's no coup. There is no ladder to climb to knock them off the top. They're there. And I mean, we've seen this, we see this in just throughout history, especially. I mean, I studied a lot of ancient history in university, and this is really a really common thing that happens in, especially in places like the ancient Near East, is that when you have a great king, and when kings are have total authoritative control, like they control everything. When you have a great king, oh my goodness, like it's like beautiful. The country prospers, it expands, there's infrastructure built, it's just glorious. Everything's rosy. And then that king's son is generally terrible, and because he's spoiled and he has received everything. And then when he comes into power, everything goes bad. And when he's bad, when he's corrupt, when he's debased, everything is just absolutely destroyed. Everything's burnt. The country kind of goes back to the dark ages. And that, I think, is, I mean, I haven't really seen this happen because the whole idea of a private company that is a club is a fairly new thing. But I wonder if that's the case, is that we'll see clubs go bad because people can go bad. Whereas a club that's a community-driven thing is kind of regulated just by the ebb and flow of time. People come in, there's good days. People go out, there's bad days. People come in, there's good days. People go out, there's bad days. But yeah, whereas a club that's run by a person who is financially invested can go really bad really quick, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's all on your shoulders,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's all on your shoulders as an individual. But there's no reason why in your scenario that the owner has to run the operations.
Correct.
You can sit there and run strategy, do the great stuff that you do around contacting people and bringing in options and, supporting the members from a benefits perspective. The person that is the face man that runs the club could be someone completely different. It doesn't.
Yeah.
You could still have a president style, president, secretary, coordinator, whatever you want, that actually manages the operations of that business or club. And that's how you would scale.
Yeah. I mean, this is the unique challenge that I have with the Australian Hunters Club, is that it is a national club, and it's a national club so that we can get national coverage and national resources and make the club awesome. But because it's national, it runs the risk of becoming disconnected and fractured. Not because there's branches, but because people are so far separated. So my challenge is to encourage local pockets of community. And like we said before, encouraging club members to do the work themselves in connecting. It's like the club provides you top level benefits and access and information and structures some events, but really all of that is designed to get you hyped and excited for hunting so that you can connect with other club members who are close to you, and that you almost form these mini clubs, these little mini pockets of community that are so much more powerful, really in reality, and so much more nimble and flexible than a big national club. The challenge is that people can be lazy. The challenge that people can be nervous and not want to connect and not make those, not step out. Not like you who said on your third meeting, hey, why aren't you guys talking to new members? Most people aren't like that. I wish that more people would be, but most people aren't. And my challenge is at the moment trying to find ways to motivate individuals to make that kind of commitment to. And I've got ideas. There's already things in play that's already helping in that, and we're already seeing that grow. And I'm already identifying people who are influencers in these little pockets that are emerging. But it's a unique challenge that that a small local club that has a clubhouse doesn't have. They don't have to worry about that, but they also don't have the resources and the reach that a large club has.
Yeah. If you have a look at large organizations, large hunting organizations, so we talk about what I belong to as a club, it's actually an organization. It just has clubs or communities of interest is what they call them. So we used to have branches. We still have branches, but only because the old school don't want to let go of the terms, I think. So, there's 35 branches around the country and you belong to a branch. Well, in fact, you don't. You belong to the ADA. It's one ADA. And then you can join whatever community of interest that you like. I want sambar, hound hunting. I want indicating dogs. I want Queensland deer, whatever. Join those interest groups is the concept. And if you were building it from scratch, you would get these leaders, Chris, in your group. You would get these leaders that were passionate about something, and you create this community of interest, and you let your whole membership group know that if you wanted to get into hound hunting, this guy's your guy. He'll run the hound hunting community of interest, and then there'll be another one and another one and another one. Are they branches? Yeah. They become branches when they have a geographical home.
Well, as well as a leadership structure, and I think that's where that's
created where that now with that guy over there that likes hound hunting. He's the leader now.
Well, but no, he's not, because he's not the. I mean, maybe he's someone of influence, but he doesn't necessarily have to be a leader, and that's why I think it's
that's a rebranded version of leader, Chris. Come on.
Okay, no, we'll get real. So he or she is definitely leading. And maybe there is a measure. So I would argue, unless authority has been ceded to them by whoever is in the position of power, then they're just leading. They're not a leader. So in my mind, I think there's a difference between a leader and leading. I think everyone can lead, but not everyone is a leader. Everyone can have leading qualities, but not everyone has is a leader. I think they're very, very different things. And if you had these expressions of...
The dog's snoring. Just going to wake her up.
If you had these kind of interest groups and they had an authority unto themselves or a measure of power, then I think they're branches. And from my experience, branches can quickly turn into tribes, and tribes love to go to war against other tribes because they're all competing for resources. And I've seen that so much in clubs where it's like, we're a part of this tribe and F you to that tribe and those bunch of wallies over there. And it just destroys communities. It's really sad and dangerous.
Yeah, it is. And that is the problem that comes with scale. You know, It doesn't matter whether you're a club-based or a company, business like you're building, all of those sorts of things. As you scale and create pockets of interest, whether you call them a leader or not, whether you appoint them a leader or not, they will form some form of leadership. And that leadership can pick themselves up and relocate to something else. And trying to keep control over that at a business level, it's difficult. You know, you've got to have the right people around you to do it. And I don't know the answers to it. I can just see how the very well-structured, very popular clubs with lots of benefit, grow, need help, leader. Shit, we've got branches. What do we do about this? We'll call them something else. We don't have branches anymore, and you're not a leader. Well, you, buddy, I've put my heart and soul into this, and I've grown hound hunting, and, you know, who do you think you are just because you own it? You know, I can see it. Like, this is clubs, right? This is what we're here to talk about. It's how this shit happens, and it becomes quite frustrating.
Let's talk about that. Let's share. I mean, if you're comfortable, let's share some horror stories that you've seen externally or you've witnessed yourself. Have you witnessed something like that where you've seen a club that is become divided because of some philosophy or how the money's spent or quarrels over leadership positions, and then is literally like they've packed up and they said, all right, everyone follow me, and they've just like completely separated and formed a new club? Have you seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure I'm comfortable talking about it. I have seen scenarios where groups of members have white-handed out leadership groups to take over. I've seen people take control of assets, bank accounts, all sorts of things. Like, it all comes down to money. Always. It's always got money involved. And this is what I was talking about before. I stick it over in the corner, happy to use it, but money does not run my club. And the people in my organization, like in the club, they love what we do. They love going hunting. We give them all the advice. No one is kept in the dark. If you want advice about something, we'll tell you. If you want spot X in that park, we'll tell you. It's fine. No problem. And we mentor loads of new people, and that's great. Money doesn't come into it, other than the fact that sometimes we go to a private block and you've got to pay your share. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't like money in a club scenario. It's necessary in some instances, but if you're a group of people that want to go hunting, what does it cost you? What does it cost? What should the club provide for you? Right?
Yeah.
Nothing, really, other than some guidance and leadership and a great time. You know, and that sort of happens.
Yeah.
But like, I've seen some and heard some absolute horror stories. And, you know, you're talking about all sorts of things on all different sorts of levels that I won't dive into. But if you want to think about them,
why not?
Dastardly, because
this is what the podcast is for. Is to get into the nitty gritty. And like, I'm not suggesting we. I don't want to throw shade. I don't want to down talk anyone. But what I think is important for new hunters, especially, or for seasoned hunters, is that we get into the weeds and try and find what the roots are, or the nuggets that are causing this behavior, and then potentially address them in new forms of clubs, or at least discuss them so that people understand, like, what motivates a someone in a club to seize an asset like a bank account? Like what is behind? I mean, is it human nature, or is there something about the structure of the club that is encouraging them or facilitating them at least the opportunity to do that? So if I'm happy to protect identities and not say names, but if we could get into the weeds, I mean, I'm here to get into the weeds here. Let's get the shotgun and go into the weeds.
I can get into some weeds. Again, it comes down to money. It comes down to greed. It comes down to selfishness. How do you protect a club? You don't let those sorts of people in, but how do you stop them? If it's a big organization, and I'm not even talking about the ADA that I'm in now, there's plenty that I've been involved with where I've seen this stuff happen. Who has the right to turn away a member?
Well, I mean, if it's a business, the business owner.
Right.
But if it's not a business, then I guess, well, in some regards, it's like if I don't, I mean, if
how do you vet your members?
That's a very good question. It's very hard to do. A lot of it is proactive efforts. So once you've got members and once it starts hitting the fan, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like it's very hard. I mean, this is a challenge again with the as a business model, as a private company business model is you need to make money for it to function, and you probably have certain financial responsibilities that you need to commit to. And so to turn away members is very difficult and dangerous and hard. If you had some sort of crazy, like if I go onto the Australian Hunters Club website and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm interested in a platinum membership because I want to win guided hunts. And then I get to the next page, and you'll appreciate this being a techie guy, and I certainly appreciate this being a, past web designer. And I go to the next page, my second click on the website, and then there's this dirty big form that's like 500 fields, and I have to attach my driver's license. I have to put in my tax file number.
Not even a smart form. You've got to print it and handwrite on it.
Yeah, exactly. I have to declare mental illness or health issues. I need to talk about how many wives or husbands I've had. Like, if the level of information that would be required to vet someone, even and the difficulty of even it being like authenticating that information is so far from being realistic. It's not funny, because you just be like, nah. So you basically have to take these people and go, I'm going to hope that the advertising and the marketing and my outreach is such that I'm demonstrating positive values that people are resonating with, and my messaging is clear and moral and authentic and pure. And anyone who responds, I hope that they resonate with those values, and that's why they're joining. And then I will take them at their word. And if it hits the fan, then I'll address it. That's really, I think, all you can do. And that's not a great answer or even a great system, but like, what else do you do?
Right. So at a club level, because we run so many trips and hunts, you want to know those people before they come away on a trip with you with a rifle, sharp knives. What could go wrong, right? So you really try very hard not to draw a person into your hunt that is an absolute lunatic, right?
Yeah.
How do we do it? I have to thank the R license system for that, because everyone that joins our club usually joins because they want to get active in hunting, and the majority of them are fairly new. Lots of new hunters come through our doors, and one of the first things I do with them is I sit them down for 2 hours and do an R license course. Under the old system, it was about 2 hours of education to get someone an R license accreditation, and I did that for the club, and 3 or 4 of the other senior people in the club also did those courses. So before we took them out on a hunt, most of the time I would have spent 2 hours with them. And within 2 hours, you can get a fairly good measure of a character.
You can get a really good read, yeah.
Yeah, right. The type of questions they're answering, whether they get frustrated with legal stuff, whatever stories they want to tell you after that, right? It's not hard.
Yeah.
So that gives us the opportunity to do it. But you still, they can sign up on a website and they can come and join your club. And, in years gone by and clubs that we've been involved with, they've had property, they've had access. I know people that have joined our club purely because they needed to get ground access to the neighbour's place to poach. They didn't care about our block. They just knew that we had the neighbours, right? So they came, they got inducted, and they hopped the fence. And that put the whole club into disrepute in the neighbourhood. There's police called, there's things going on, there's, shit being slung everywhere. That's all. That was the entire objective of this person. People that really want to do something and they don't have good motives find a way to do it. And sometimes that comes through us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just a fact of life, whether it's a hunting club or any business. If people can abuse the system and gain it, they try.
And when there's money involved, that happens. And there's scenarios where people have taken control through voting, through good PR work on the ground to get those votes, and then basically left an organisation and taken the assets. Stuff like that. I've seen and heard of far more dastardly criminal behaviour. That stuff that you don't even speak out loud type stuff.
Oh man, how can you be equipped? Well, this is one of the reasons why I think constitutions are so important, and having clear rules around behaviour and levels of accountability and consequence. I think this becomes really powerful, especially at scale. It's difficult because again, as a business, your objective is to provide value but make money. And if you have to kick out a member, that's reoccurring revenue that you're then saying no to. But at the same time, the culture and the well-being of your community is at a financial level, the most important thing, because if people are happy, the people will stay and people keep spending money. But also at an ethical level, it's really important that people are happy and getting value and want to stay. And so when you have a really tight constitution that says this is what we stand for, these are types of behavior that we exhibit, and when you join our club, you agree to these things. And likewise, if you do these kinds of activities, you're out, basically. And how many strikes, this many strikes, or these are the consequences. And unfortunately, the only consequences that you can actually really enforce is loss of membership. And maybe you'll pass the information on to the police for whatever state they're in. But at the same time, hunting clubs that offer genuine reason do have a little bit more power, in that if you're a member of my hunting club and you've applied for genuine reason through my hunting club, and you have 10 rifles and you go out hunting and it's your life, and all of a sudden you do something against the Constitution and I kick you out, you lose your genuine reason, and I'm obliged.
I'd like to.
No. I am legally required to communicate that loss of membership to the state body from which it was registered. And so then the police know that you no longer have a genuine reason to own 10 rifles, and they can come to your property and say, we give us those 10 rifles. They can legally. Now, whether or not that gets enforced or not, we can discuss that reality. But the fact is that power is there. And I actually make it a point of really clearly communicating this to any members. We haven't had many members leave the club, but there's a little bit of turnover. So anyone that does have a genuine reason, if you fill out the membership cancellation form, it says, hey, just so you know, you have genuine reason. If you leave the club, we have to report this. You won't have genuine reason. So before you do this, if you are planning on leaving, make sure you join another club and get your genuine reason and fill out all that paperwork. Otherwise, you could be in trouble. So there is a little bit of power there to kind of enforce good behavior. And then in some other things, like for instance, the SSAA have the Farmer Assist program, which is a program by which you can get access to rural private property to help with controlling pests, and the farmers are a part of this program, and they submit their jobs essentially for when they want people involved, and members of the SSAA can then go and express interest in completing those jobs. And again, that's a benefit that is highly prized, especially for people in like Queensland who like access is everything. That can be taken away, and it can be like, no, Johnny, you shot that farmer's cow, and now you're not a member of our club, and you lose your genuine reason and you lose your access. So naughty Johnny, or that's a slap on the wrist, Johnny, and don't shoot the cow again, kind of thing.
Go pay the farmer his money for his cow. Yeah, look, I agree, but I think unfortunately there are people in society that don't give a shit about your rules. They're not going to read your code of conduct. They're joining for a reason. Maybe they're joining you because they've been booted out of the last one that didn't tell the cops that they weren't allowed to do it. Who knows? It scares me, some of the things that, and let's say, just to put that all into context, there are some punks out there that do the wrong thing. But by and large, over my years and years of working in hunting clubs, I've had an excellent experience, and I've only encountered a very small group of those, but you never forget them, because you're like, that's never happening again, and this is how I'm going to stop it. And we run a pretty tight ship where we are, and I love it. It's great. It's really good, wholesome, lots of experience, good mates.
No, I completely agree. My experience has been the same in that 99.9% of everyone has really pure motives, that they're all in it for the same reasons. They want to connect, that they want to hunt, they want to learn, they want to sew back in, or they just want to passively receive the benefits, which again is all right. That's each to their own. And you have the 1%, and generally they don't even realize that they're being malicious. That's just the kind of person they are. That's the background that they have, and environmental pressures, how they were raised, all that kind of thing, being abused, whatever, has turned them into the person that they are. And they just don't function in community. It doesn't matter what community that they're in. It's really sad, but they just don't function. And whether or not a club has a responsibility, or a community has a responsibility to help that person through, maybe they can help to a degree or to a measure until it becomes unhealthy for either the club or that person.
There's scenarios where you look at someone and say, not sure I'd want that person on the hunt crew. But it's not because they're malicious. It's not because they're nasty or horrible. Maybe they're just not competent. And in that case, I think, as a club, we like to support those people. We take a number of people on trips that don't carry a rifle. They want to be part of the experience. One of the trips that we went on recently, we have older members come down that can't walk the hills anymore. But man, do they love it when someone brings a deer into camp and they can show them all of their butchery skills, and they just take over. It's fantastic. So it brings all of this, age demographic into a club, and I think that's fantastic.
And I think that's actually a really good measure of finding out whether someone is legitimate about their desires and whether they have the right mindset. Is if you invited them on a hunting trip and said, "Hey, unfortunately, you can't bring your rifle, you'll just have to come as a spectator." Someone who's truly committed to your club or to the community, or even just likes hunting in general, or a good mate, will be like, all right, sure, like, I'll come.
There's heaps of our good friend Muhammad. He started that way. Where you introduced him to me at a hunter's dinner in Toowoomba, and he was more than happy just to come along for the ride. Turns out, he was able to go and hunt anyway and do it himself. And he's been successful since, which is really great for Muhammad as a new hunter. He's enjoyed that experience. But him and a load of other people were happy to rack up the experience without the rifle. And that's, you're right, it is a measure of their commitment.
I took a member, Ben, who's now a friend, and these are the risks that you take, right, when you're not vetting, is you kind of have a phone call, or you put the word out there. In our club, you can host a hunt, about it. But for anyone listening, any member can host a hunt, and any other member can express interest in going on that hunt. And it's one of the solutions that I'm putting in place to encourage these little micro communities. But I said, hey, I'm going to South Australia. I've got a hunt in Water Valley, which is a big game reserve, like a high fenced property. There'll be thousands and thousands and thousands of deer, every species that you can imagine. I've got room for one spectator. Does anyone want to come? And Ben was like, straight up, like, yes, please. I would love to come. I would be honored to come. Here's how I could help, blah, 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 blah. And he had the time of his life, and it was awesome. And he just had the best heart, and we had such a fun experience together. And it was a risk. I didn't know what Ben was like. He didn't know what I was like. But sometimes I feel like 99% of that time that risk pays off. And
I agree.
Hunting clubs are a great venture where you can take. I think you can take more risks in a hunting club than you can outside of a hunting club. Put it that way, because at least there's some sort of framework in place, or some level of accountability, or a constitution, or even just older hunters that are going to shred you if you step out of line. That you can take some more of those risks, and I don't mean risky behavior. I mean like relationships, forming relationships, which is always a risk. Let me ask you a question, Ian. We've spoken a little bit about leadership. What kinds of people, specifically, we'll talk about community-driven organizations, and you can leverage your past experience and history and knowledge if you want to, or you can just tell me what you think. What kind of people are attracted to senior positions in hunting clubs?
Oh,
I'm intentionally not loading that question. I'll let you load it if you want to.
there's two answers to that. The real answer to that for me is not many people are interested in senior positions in hunting clubs. I've let my club know that I'm standing down from my role this year. I've been involved with it for a long time. Time for me to do something different, but I'm not overrun by candidates that want to step up and take the job.
Yeah. Why? Why is that?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I feel it for my club. We've got 150 members. At the beginning of the year, we book up 10 or 15 hunts, throw them all up on our page for people to say, I want to go on this one, I want to go on that one. Everyone says where they want to go, and then I map out who wants to go where, and everyone gets a chance, pretty much. I haven't yet had a year where someone's missed out, so I didn't have enough spots.
That's awesome. Which
is great. And there's always a cancellation. So usually someone gets 2 or 3, and there's opportunities outside of what we organise. But someone's got to do the work. And in our club, most of our trips are what we call mentor hunts. So we'll run some public land hunts down in Nundle near Tamworth, where people can come and join in the hunters camp, and you'll go off and you'll do your hunting, and you'll come back to a communal space, and that's great. You might even be lucky enough to pair up with an older member who can go out and show you the ropes, which is also great. But a lot of our trips are on private land. They have good chances of taking deer, and we will pair up a new hunter, someone who hasn't taken a deer in their life, more often than not, with a more experienced person, and we'll mentor hunt them to success, which is awesome. And if under the rare circumstance you don't get to shoot a deer, you're usually with someone who has, and you still get to go through the full process of breakdown and all of those sorts of things. Now, in my club, I feel like, and this is through my own fault, because I took it on and I did it, and I didn't get too many more people around me to support it. I end up doing most of those trips. So I spend more time helping other people hunt than doing it myself. Now, that's not to say, those in the club that are listening that are mentors, they get involved, they do. But I feel like it's my responsibility. And I think those around me see how much work I've been doing, and they're not really keen to take that on. Whereas in my position as a president of the branch, I should be delegating that stuff out. I should have been better at creating leaders that could take on some of that responsibility and not leave such a workload. So that's a problem. Now, to answer your question, in my environment, what attracts a great leader? Like, what attracts someone who wants to lead a hunting club? It's either not many people because they don't want to do the work, or it's someone who has the desire to put a president's hat on and be called a president, potentially get more opportunity than everyone else because of status. I don't know. I've seen that come and go. I don't see a lot of it anymore.
Yeah,
even the other
they don't last.
Around us. No, I don't feel they last. They get a term. The guy that I told you about that invited his family just so that he could get voted in, had a very grand speech prepared, and at the end of it, that was pretty much the last we even saw of him.
Yeah,
for a year.
Wow.
But he was president. Good on him.
Yeah.
Maybe they work in circles where being a club president and a hunting thing is of benefit to them. I don't know.
I imagine that, the two types of individuals that would be attracted towards a leadership position in a community-driven club would be those who have really strong positive desires for and ideas around how they can basically sacrifice themselves and their time for the sake of the club and to drive it towards a more positive vision. And then it's really kind of holistic and honest and and wholesome, and then you have those people who just want power, those people who just want the title.
There's one more group, and this is the most likely group to take the job, and that is those senior members that will put their hand up because no one else did, and they don't want to see it fail. And that is likely to be the result. Yeah.
Which is sad, right? That's really sad that because again, I don't believe that everyone is a leader, is cut out to be a leader. I think it takes a special kind of person who has special skills, a combination of special skills, and there can be some variance in what they are. But and so if someone just steps in because they don't want to see it fail, that's not a good reason for stepping in. I mean, in some regards, they have to, right? There's no choice unless otherwise it will fail. But you got to wonder whether that's sustainable, or whether the whole house of cards just falls. And
this is what I said earlier. If I felt like the organisation was surviving because of me, I've got pretty big tickets on myself. I know that I do a lot of work, and I expect that when I go off and do something else, when I stand down later in the year, people will pick it up and carry on. It's not going to fall in a hole because of me. It just won't happen. It survived before me, it'll survive after me. And, there are national structures that sit around it that'll go, okay, so you're rudderless, we've got a whole bunch of members that have joined, we need to do something, and they'll coordinate something. They'll do something around addressing the members and trying to get it up on its feet again. There's state people that can help. There's lots of people that can help. So it is a shame if someone does it just because. But maybe that person is doing it just because now there's an opportunity. They didn't think they were good enough at the time, or they didn't want to challenge the status quo. But this is their chance to stand up and maybe prove they can do it.
Let me ask you one final question, and then we'll wrap it up. And this is probably the most important question.
Can I answer the question without you asking me the question?
You can, sure, if it's the right question.
No, you shouldn't buy $1 coffee at the servo. No. Anyway,
have you ever found it? No, I can't. I'm not even going to go into. I'm not even going to open that can of worms because I know that you'll just run with it, and we'll be here for another hour. The question, the question is this: should people join hunting clubs?
Flat out, yes. Absolutely, you should join a hunting club.
Yeah.
The best years of my life have been in hunting clubs. And I'm talking about what has made me as a person, what has formed my friendship groups that will last forever. When you left school, I'm going to be friends with these guys forever. Man, I don't know any of them anymore. And my best friends in life are my hunting mates. And I've sat on some pretty gnarly cliffs in the middle of nowhere, soul searching on hunting trips with me and a mate or a couple of mates, nice red antlers over your shoulders and no way up that goddamn hill. And you've got no idea when you'll get back to camp, and you're starving and you're hungry, and you get back to camp eventually and you're just like, yeah, that was awesome. And you remember that stuff forever. You don't get that hunting by yourself. My opinion, stories are best shared. Adventure is best shared. All of that, if you do it with somebody else, you can tell that story over and over again around a fire and, recount it with someone that experienced it with you, and it's great. Clubs do that stuff for you. Whether it's the only club in your town and you join it because of that reason, whether you like deer or pigs or goats or whatever, if it's your only club, go join it because there's going to be people there that you really get along with. Clubs also provide a voice. Collectives of clubs help with discussions into government. If you're not part of that, then you're not putting your voice somewhere that can be heard, I don't think. So there's lots of reasons to join a club. But I do suggest that you don't, I'm not saying don't, do whatever you want. But in my opinion, you can change your club 2 or 3 times in a lifetime, 4 or 5 times in a lifetime to suit what it is that you want to do. And I joined a club to gain experience. I stayed with the club to provide experience back to others. It was my way of giving back, and I really enjoyed that time. And now I'm on to something new that hopefully will provide a lot of new people a way to put into practice things they see online.
Yeah. Stay tuned for Ian's network.
The network.
I think you're 100% right. I mean, people who know me, people who watch the content on YouTube, who listen to this podcast, or just know me in general, know that I'm a huge advocate for growth. I think growing is one of the most important things that you can do as a human being, because it makes you better, and it makes you better for the people around you that you love, and it makes you better for the people around you that you don't know, that subsequently you're affected by your behavior. And so if you're growing and becoming better, then you're contributing to society, but you're also contributing to yourself. And hunting clubs provide you with the opportunity to get better, better in your skills, better in your knowledge, better in your ethics and your values, to be accountable, and to have people who are in a position that you allow to shake their finger at you and say, no, Johnny, shooting that cow was bad. Here's why. Or no, Johnny, don't join this club so that you can get access to the property across to poach on. Or no, Johnny, don't pass me a loaded rifle over, don't try and slide under a fence with a rifle that's fully cocked and the safety's off. These are ways that we can grow, and clubs provide you with opportunities like that. Take all the other benefits, the shiny bells and whistles out of it. For that alone, clubs are worth it. And you can be purely selfish and view clubs as just this transactional thing that you can take from, or hopefully, like you've alluded to, you can look outward as well and think about how you can contribute to other people's growth, to other people's value, to other people's learning and education. And hunting clubs provide you with both those things, because human beings, we're not designed to be antisocial creatures. We're social creatures, and we flourish when we're in communities, when we're in clubs, when we're in societies, when we're in networks, when we're in towns, when we're in countries. This is how we are built. This is how we operate. And so, like you said, I want to encourage anyone who's listening at the moment, go find a club, find a local club, find a national club that has benefits that suit you, and invest in that club. Ian, thanks for chatting, mate.
My pleasure. It's been a great chat.
And so that's it. That's the end of my conversation with Ian Hurley on Australian hunting clubs. And I just want to thank you for getting to the end of this podcast. Having your attention on something like this for a long period of time, especially when we get into the weeds and have some difficult conversations, is no easy thing. Your attention is valuable. So I want to thank you for placing it here and now. And I want to encourage you again, if you haven't checked out the Australian Hunters Club, go do that, australianhunters.com.au. So much of what we talked about today was negative, but at the same time, at the end of the day, we ultimately land on the fact that hunting clubs are a good thing. Hunting clubs are changing for the better, and the Australian Hunters Club is definitely one that I am pushing in that positive direction, and I would love to have you a part of it. So if you're interested in learning more or joining, check out the Australian Hunters Club at australianhunters.com.au, and hopefully I see you there. Otherwise, hopefully I see you in another video or podcast soon.